everyone, John McGrath here for the Microsoft Teams webinar. We have about 500 people on this webinar, so I just ask you to hold your questions. I've muted everybody and I'll take questions at the very end. So let's get straight down to business. So just a little bit about my own background. I wear two hats. I run the MSc in Project Management in TU Dublin, and I'm also a Microsoft trainer for almost 25 years. And just like all of you, I am transitioning to a more remote style of working, where previously I would have done a lot of my teaching face-to-face. And I suppose that really just captures the next slide here, where we talk about our workplace is changing in every possible way. In the current climate, that statement is really self-explanatory, but to bring it back to a technology perspective in terms of using these communication collaboration tools, and Teams is one of them that's out there. We've Google Hangouts, we have Zoom is another popular one. So there are a whole range of tools that are out there, but just looking at Teams at the moment, and we have seen a 500% increase in the use of Teams in the last 3 weeks. So that will give you I suppose, an understanding of the game change that is happening across all industry sectors. And I include myself in that. I was due to start a diploma in project management last Tuesday evening, instructor-led face-to-face, and now we're running it online. So we start that in a week's time. So a huge amount of work in transitioning to, I suppose, making a different learning experience for people who are going to learn online. So I'm a big believer in Adult Ed. It's about peer learning, and it's to create that peer learning environment online is our next challenge. So let's get stuck into the application Teams itself. So the first thing to understand about Microsoft Teams, it really works on multiple devices. You can use it on your laptop, you can use it on your phone, you can use it in the cloud. You really can use it on any device, Apple, Android, it doesn't really matter. You have corporate editions of Teams, you have educational editions of Teams, and you even have free personal versions of Teams. So really, it is really a one-size-fits-all, and I think what's very important is the experience on the web is identical to the experience on the application. You wouldn't really know the difference. I'm going to use the application today because I'm just conscious of, with the amount of people who are working remotely, regardless of how fast your internet is, it's going to be a little bit challenged at the moment. So to try and understand Teams, it really is a 4-in-1 solution. So you can see the 4 building blocks of Teams. We have chat, meetings, calls, and Office 365. So chat is quite similar to your WhatsApp experience. Meetings is similar to your Outlook experience. Calls is similar to your phone. And I suppose where Teams has that unique or competitive advantage for our office workers is that it integrates really well with Office 365. So in the IT developer world, they're probably more popular where they would use Zoom and Slack combined. But if you're a heavy Microsoft Office user, I do think Teams has that little advantage that it is a Microsoft product and it just works a little bit better with it. From a practical point of view, how would you describe Teams if you haven't used it before? It's really like having the best of WhatsApp, the best of Skype, the best of phone, and the best of Outlook in an all-in-one solution. To understand the licensing requirements of Teams, so I'm just showing you there that we have 4 different licenses. I'm actually going to teach this webinar that it doesn't matter which version you're going to use. I'm going to refer to the free version and I'm going to refer to the corporate versions as well. And you can run both of them. In the current climate where we're a little bit maybe challenged in terms of, I think every organization in the world wishes that its, I suppose, remote working capability was greater. So it doesn't matter how advanced you are, we all wish we were a little bit further along that curve. But the reason I say that is that if you wanted to install Teams on a personal device like your own tablet, and maybe your corporate laptop is more secure and you're not able to install it, you could still have one device for video collaboration and the other device for your regular work. It is a challenge for IT, I think, to be more flexible at the moment, but unfortunately the whole internet fraud, IT fraud is actually ramped up as well. Unfortunately, The sense of never let a crisis go to waste appeals to both project manager, criminals, and all individuals in the same vein, I suppose. Okay, now we have to understand the concept of teams and channels before we get into using the application. These are the building blocks of teams. Now, in terms of a team, it's a bit like a book, and a channel is a bit like a chapter. So every team will have a series of channels within it. As you create a team, you get one channel by default called General. Practical way of looking at it, you might have a team called HR, but within that team you will likely have a couple channels, which might be training, recruitment, pensions. So again, teams is the major building block and channels are the sub-building blocks. A channel cannot exist on its own. It has to sit within a team. This is how it might look to you visually. So you can see the idea that the organization will have multiple teams, and within those teams there will be multiple channels, and there will be various different content within those channels. It is very likely that you will be a member of a number of teams. You could be a member of a departmental team, but you could also be a member of a project team. Now, why Microsoft Teams? Well, I think it's self-explanatory in the current climate. I suppose it's really driven by this need for remote working. I suppose keeping social distance and keeping corporate distance is driving that need for it. But certainly, I think it's been on the agenda, or it's been on the horizon of a lot of organizations to implement it. I might just bring your attention to point number 2, AI powered. It's got very strong artificial intelligence driving teams in the background. It can really be applied to all industries and departments. So I'm just giving you sort of a snapshot there where it's being used, and actually within education as well, which is, I suppose, is my area, and also within project management or in teaching IT. So I have multiple Teams accounts depending on what organization I'm training for. Some organizations insist I have their own specific laptop, and I have my own specific Teams account within that, keeping everything secure. But then on my own personal laptop, I have a number of Teams accounts, and the same level of security isn't required in that case. Now, I mentioned AI just to give you an idea of some of the super capabilities behind it. So you can see the idea here of inline message translation. So what Teams can do is it can translate language in real time. So if it's the case that you have a colleague who's based in a different country, maybe speaks a different language, as they are typing in Teams in the chat section, again similar to WhatsApp or a text message, as you're typing you can have Teams pretty much almost in real time translating to a different language. And likewise, when I type back, say in English, and if the person at the other end of the chat is a native French speaker, I can have my English being translated into French and their French being translated into English. So really smart AI capability. In many respects, a bit like Google Translate, except for happening in real time, and there's no need to be copying and pasting from one application to another. The third building block is meeting recording transcription. And not only can Teams record your video meeting, but the second thing that it can actually do is it can actually take the audio and it can convert that to a text file, essentially giving you a draft of your meeting minutes or meeting actions coming out of it. Then it's got a number of other features. You can see in the image on the furthest right, I have background blur, so it can actually blur out your background so you don't see any of the background. Some of these little tips and tricks I've actually posted on LinkedIn as well, so you'll find me on LinkedIn showing you those tips. Now, good practice I find is to do a test beforehand. So we'll take a look at that. But what I'm showing you here is before I jump on a call or before I join a meeting, I've done a quick technical check, and you can see everything looks good except my camera. So it could be sometimes what causes that is if you're using other applications excuse me, like Zoom or something like that, you'll often find that you might have to do a reboot or something. But if you're using only Teams, it tends to just be very straightforward. However, if you're using something like GoToMyPC or something like that, a remote tool, you can sometimes find that the security will block you if you're using remotely. So it just depends on what you're using. A VDI environment should be fine, but just depending on if you're remote connecting into another PC, it'll very often be looking for the webcam on that PC as opposed to the webcam on your laptop if you're connecting remotely. Okay, the other thing I think we should bear in mind, and this is a famous image and everyone gets this, it's not about perfect, it's about fit for purpose when you're working from home. There is a whole range of family situations happening in everyone's background, and I think this really captures it. We didn't think any less of this individual's professionalism. If anything, we had a bit of empathy to recognize these are the challenges working from home. By the way, this is the perfect image to talk to you about that feature blur background. So if this was a Microsoft Teams meeting, this individual had have used the blur background, all we would have gotten is the silhouette of his jacket, head, hair, etc. So none of the background would have been captured, and we wouldn't have this iconic, very funny but very human moment. But that's almost a sense of where blur background, if you're presenting from your kitchen table or your bedroom or something like that, you can blur out the background, maintaining your privacy. Okay, let's get stuck into a hands-on demo of using Teams. Now, I'm going to switch application here just to make sure we can see, and I'm in Teams now here, as you can see. Now, so what I want to draw your attention to is on the left, I have actually built a table of contents within Teams to give you a sense of what we're going to look at. So if we look in the left, I have the overview of Teams, the activity, Teams and channels, chat, calendar, and files, where I'm going to talk about OneNote and SharePoint. So just within those teams, you can see I have a series of channels. These are the building blocks of the content we're going to look at here. So I'll just open it here, and I will come back and I will refer to this as we progress. So it's quite significant what we have there, but we will get through it all. The one thing I will draw your attention to, coming back to the theoretical concept that we started with looking at the slides, you will notice under each of the teams, which I've given it a title, each team starts with a channel called General. So the nature of Teams, if you remember, is as you create a team, it automatically creates one channel by default called General, and you can add additional channels. We will look at that in the Teams and Channels section. Now, I said to you there were different versions of Teams, free version, corporate versions, educational versions. So just very briefly to draw your attention to that, it actually makes very little difference. There's really only kind of one significant change between the free versions and the corporate or enterprise versions. So we're going to understand this in the context of the very first building block or module here. We see overview of Teams. And just to take a kind of a quick look or a general look of the overview, probably the most important button up here, if you can see where my mouse is hovering, is the chat feature. So when I click on chat, that kicks off. I start typing somebody's name, and as you can see, it will recognize any previously contacted chats, or if you're on a corporate edition of this, it will connect into your Outlook directory or your Active Directory in the background. So you essentially you can really chat or call anybody in Teams that you can contact in Outlook, subject to them being set up in Teams, of course, by your IT department. Now, so what I really want to look at now is the sidebar. So on the sidebar, we have the very first button is activity. Each of these really are building blocks of functionality. So I just want us to notice here we have activity, which really is like the hub of everything you do in Teams is managed by your activity. Chat is really the text messaging capability. Teams is, the different departments, projects that you're connected to in Teams. Calls is making a call. File is your ability to take a document into Teams. This is the free version. This is the version, if you remember, I said that I built to show us this structure here. What I want you to notice here is that there is no calendar icon on the buttons. That's the key difference. So if you check your own Teams account, you should find that it has a calendar icon on the left. Now I'm going to switch in here. I have a couple of Teams accounts and I'm going to switch between them. It won't make it any more confusing. It's just kind of allowing me to show you different functionality, and I will come back every so often to take a look at my table of contents here. So just to take a look at what a corporate version might look like, well, pretty much the exact same, except for you will notice I have the calendar icon here. By the way, I'm using my TU Dublin account now, and again, slight subtle difference in an academic version. We also have the ability for another capability called assignments. And it's very important to understand that you can build additional functionality into Teams as you go along. If we look in the bottom left corner, there's an app section, and when I click on that, we'll now see there's a massive array of Microsoft apps, but you can also install third-party apps as well. You'll notice along the top, these are non-Microsoft tools here or applications, and these can be installed as well. So it's pretty powerful in what you can do. You get a standard capability out of the box, and then you get additional capability you can build on as well. Okay, so let's come back to my I suppose my main list, and we've taken a look just at the overview. So just very quickly, if you want to make a call, you click on calls, you come down here, you can type the person's name, or if you have previously called them, you'll see that they're in the suggested list here. But for example, if I was to type in here a colleague, and I could click on their name, and I can then literally decide if I want to start with a phone call or a video call. So that's all that's required to kick off a call. Chat, we've actually seen. We just take a quick look again. So if you go into chat now here, and if I go to a previous chat, obviously I could click here, and I could literally carry on typing at the bottom here, type a new message. Or if I want to start a new chat, just as we saw earlier on, I can type in the person, and as I'm typing, you can see their name appears. I click on it, and I just start typing down the bottom. Very straightforward, very similar to Skype, very similar to WhatsApp or any other instant messaging system that you've used before. Okay, now the next thing I want to look at is the whole area of presence. This is a feature that typically most team users don't understand. So if we look in the top right corner of the screen, you'll see that there's a picture of me, showing me what account I'm using, and there's a little green tick, and if I hold my mouse over it, it says available. Now what that is doing there is it is alerting to my colleagues that if they send me a chat at this moment in real time, I'm available. So remember, Teams is an instant messaging system. The essence of this is you send somebody a message when they're at their computer and they should reply. So it's really a dynamic, alive messaging system. Now, this is clever enough to recognize my Outlook calendar. So if I'm on a call or I'm in a meeting or I'm booked to be in a physical meeting in Outlook, Teams will dynamically change my presence to indicate my availability. Now, just to see the options that are available, we see here available. So if I was in a meeting or on a call or even giving a PowerPoint presentation, it would be clever enough to switch to busy. Quite important it does that, because somebody could send you a live message in real time. So you could get something confidential popping up on the screen when you're presenting in a, well, at the moment, I suppose, in a webinar or in an online meeting. But, you know, in the real world, when we return to it, it could be in your meeting room or your boardroom with clients or something like that there. Now, you can also manually change your availability. So if I'm under pressure getting something ready, or I'm just need to, maybe I'm on a busy phone call separate from Teams, I can actually switch to busy here manually. And if you can see, the little red tick comes up, and then it indicates I'm not available. So if somebody sends me a chat or calls me, it won't ring. But I can also, if we have a little look, I could change it to be right back. So for example, if I'm just going out to get a coffee or something like that, you can set it. You can also appear away. So you might be busy working in Teams and in a very busy, heated discussion or whatever it may be, and you don't want another chat jumping in, interrupting you, so you can appear away. Another setting that I think is quite useful or relevant to set in the current climate is because many of us are working remotely at the moment, I like to set a message here. So what I've actually done here is I've put in a manual message here to say working remotely, also available on the mobile. And if we look here, when I click the little edit button, I've told it not to clear the status of this, but we see there are a number of options here where you could change that for a certain amount of time. So for example, I could put up there, busy at the moment, will contact you as soon as I can, and I could switch that to 1 hour, so it would automatically disappear after an hour. But I'm using this as a sort of a default message at the moment. Okay, so that is really an overview of the general section of Teams. So we've looked at calls, we've looked at chat, and we just looked at presence there, which we saw just a moment ago. I'll just change this back to available now. Okay, now the next thing that I want to look at is the whole area of activity, the first building block in the top left corner. Excuse me. Now, activity is really, really important that you understand how to manage this, because what activity is, it's the hub, it's the crossroads of everything that happens in Teams. So Teams is a bit like a busy inbox. If you don't manage it very quickly, you get hundreds, if not thousands of emails clocking up very quickly. So when I go to activity, as you can see, I get an incredibly busy just a list of calls, actions, meetings, whatever it may be there. And the problem with that is 99% of that is irrelevant. It's like those emails you're CC'd on. Yes, in theory, you'd like to read them, but you've more important things to do. So how I kind of filter in on that 1% that I'm really interested in is by using the filtering feature within activity. So if I click on filter, it creates this little more options, 3 dots icon. I click on that, and this is really the backbone. I can filter for what's important. So to me, one of the most important things is missed calls. I click on that, and it suddenly filters down to all the missed calls I have, so I can figure out who's been looking for me, and I can ring them back as required. So that's a very useful feature. Another thing is that if you are a part of a large department, and let's imagine that there's several hundred chats a day going back and forth in Teams. And again, there's probably 1 to 5% of that is specific to you and you need to be aware of. So it's very difficult to keep track of all the correspondence that's happening in a chat, especially if you're connected to multiple teams. So one of the features I find really useful, again, the exact same idea here, in activity, in the filter, we go to more, and this time I click on mentions. And what that does, it specifically filters only for chats where my name has been mentioned. And you can see here, this is an example where my name has been mentioned. Quite a good feature, mentions. I'll show you how to use that within chat as we progress. Okay, so that really is just to take a quick look back here to kind of keep me honest in terms of what we're covering. Just to show you, so I've covered the overview of Teams, I've covered the activity. I'll collapse these down now, and I'm now going to get into the substance of Teams and channels, the major building blocks. Probably the most technical part of this, but very straightforward, very similar to a file folder structure you might develop in Windows Explorer. Okay, so I'll switch back in here to my we can actually use this. We'll use this Teams interface to show this. So the first thing I want to take a look at is how to create a team. So this is really important. So for example, if we look down in the bottom left corner, I have an option to join or create a team. So I'm going to click on that, and it gives me the option to create team. Now just a small word of caution. If you're in a corporate environment, you may not be given permission to create teams. And that's really a kind of an IT governance issue. And the problem is, in a large organization, lots of people start creating teams with the same name, and it causes massive confusion. A bit like the idea of when you allow users to create websites in SharePoint. There has to be some element of naming convention, some element of controls on it. So you just mightn't have that option. But I do in this environment here, so I hit create team. Now we have two options here: create from an Office 365 group or team. Typically that would be done by an IT administrator, but for ourselves we might build a team from scratch. So I'm going to go build a team from scratch. Now public, again, that might be something like sports and social, remote working. Again, these will typically be built by the organization, probably requested by the organization to IT. It's far more likely that we would be building a private team specific to a smaller team that we're working with. So I'm going to click private here. It asks me to give the team a name, so I'm going to call it Project ABC. As we can see, you can give a little description. It's good practice to do that, because if people are unsure, if there's another project called ABB, my description should really clarify to the person which team they should be connecting to, or which one they should be posting in. I hit create. You add your users. Now you get a little prompt here, nice work, just telling you you've done it correctly, and now it looks me to add users. Again, you start typing, you literally click in the names and you add them in. I won't do that just from a time limitation, I'll skip that, but that's it. Hey presto, we created a new team. Project ABC, one channel by default called General. Now let's take a quick look at how we did that again. Bottom left corner, up to create a team, build a team from scratch. Private is the most common one. This time I'll call it remote working. We hit create, get a little prompt up telling you you've created the team successfully. The next step will be to add the users. We had a quick look, you just start typing, click and add. I'll skip it, and you'll now see we now have another team created with remote working and general. So general, again, the default channel. Now, what I want to do now is show you how to add another channel. So we can see remote working. I go to the more icon and I go to add channel, and I'm going to call this one technology, and I hit add, and you should find now, just taking a second to work. By the way, bear in mind when you do work here locally, all of this is actually synchronizing on Microsoft's Office 365 server. So it's not like just renaming a folder on your local drive. You're really driving Microsoft's cloud server. So while it happens very fast, sometimes it isn't in real time, and it might just be a couple second lag, or even maybe longer than that. It could be, up to a minute or something like that. Or likewise, if you delete something, it deletes visually from your team's environment, but sometimes it hasn't deleted fully from the team server on Office 365. Not a big deal, just something to be aware of. Probably more for the IT people who are watching this. Okay, so we've created a team. We've created channels, as we can see. I'll just create one more channel there. I think it's important. We click on the more icon, add channel, and then we will, so I'll just call this social working. New channel, we hit add. Channel is built. And hey presto, as we can see under remote working, I have a new channel now called social working. Now, we also have my project team here. So these are our teams I've created. The channels general were created by default, and I manually created my own additional channels as well. Now, the slight sort of danger around this is a bit like looking into a black hole. There's so many teams and channels. So for example, if there are certain teams or channels you're interested in, it's a good practice to treat them as a favorite. So you can actually pin them. So if we look at the top of my teams here, there's nothing above your teams. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to social working, and I'm going to click on the more icon, and I click and pin. And we should see now that it has pinned social working to the top. So it's sitting there. Likewise, I could take, for example, any feature here. So I'm just going to go to calendar here. I go to live event. I click on the icon. I hit pin. Now it doesn't remove it. That's important here, guys. See, live event still sits there. It's really just like a shortcut. You're pinning it as a favorite, because if the main channels you use should be pinned, so you just use them that little bit more effectively. Okay, You can also hide and unhide teams. So I want you to take a little look, if you don't mind. At the very bottom of the screen here, I have hidden teams. And when I open it, I actually have several other teams, and I've deliberately just created these as sample teams. And you can actually see they're all hidden. So example, GDPR was a previous project, so it's no longer relevant, or I've gone off that project, so I've now just hidden it. So let's just take a look at how we would do that. So if we see project ABC, as the project closes out of it and it's no longer an active team, I come over to the more icon again, I click and hide. It disappears off my main list and it moves down to hidden teams. I'll do the same here with remote working. I click on the three little dots, the more icon, we hit hide, and now all of these have moved down into my hidden teams. So when I collapse hidden, you can see there's only a very subtle little pointer here, and I can expand or collapse that as is required. Okay, so we're progressing along. So just to take a look here where we are, so we're looking at teams and channels. I think we're okay with adding a favorite, pinning it, creating a channel we've covered, creating a team we've covered, hiding and unhiding we've covered. Actually, I didn't show you how to unhide, so let's just have a quick look at that. So I can go down here, and for example, I'll go to Microsoft Excel, which I do a lot of teaching on. If I want to make that active, I click on show, and now when I collapse my hidden teams, we'll actually see Excel now has come back in. And by the way, you can drag those as well. If I want to move that up to the top, I can bring it up, and we'll now see as I drop it there that Microsoft Excel is moved up to the top. So you can rearrange your teams just as you can rearrange your channels. Now, coming back here, the two things I need to cover here are team management and administration and team members. I'm going to look at those together because really they're managed in the same area. So if you want to add additional people to your channel, you want to remove them, want to change the level of access they have, you just go to the little more options here, and we go to manage channel. Now members here shows you how to add members. So you can see here add member over here, and you can also set the level of permission they have, owner or a member. Channels here shows you what channels you have, what level of access. Just a quick look through. This is really you will probably never use these settings, but just to take a quick look. So go into settings here, you can see a lot of kind of administration stuff. Analytics here is an interesting one. You can actually track the level of activity. Is the team being used? Now in this case here, you just get the idea. This is a sample team I just created, and obviously we've got very low activity on it. Apps is a very interesting area. I'll cover that. But you can install additional apps into Teams to give it more capability. So you can see here there's 3 apps installed here. But I will show you how to install third-party apps further down. Okay, we've covered teams and channels. I think we're okay with that. I'll collapse this, and now we're moving on to chat. So in this case here, again, the general is the default one, just a default channel. Now alert when available, I personally think this is a brilliant feature, and again it's one of those things that people don't use. So alert when available allows you to only send messages to somebody when they're live, they're active on Teams. So the nature of Teams, it's an instant messaging system. It's not a replacement for your email. So we want to be sending people messages when they're live, when they're actively available in Teams. We don't send them a message when they're not there, and then they reply when we're not there. I mean, that's email. This is different. This is instant messaging. It's a dynamic live messaging system. So what I'm going to do here now to demonstrate this is I'm going to switch back into my actual live environment here. So my TU Dublin account. And what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go to my calls, and we'll imagine these are the people I'm looking for, or I could go to chats, it doesn't really matter. But for example, if we see here, we see Alan here has got a green tick next to his name, which indicates he's available. Yvonne has the little orange marker, and as I hold my mouse over it says they're away. So what I want the system to do is I want it to send me a notification as Yvonne comes back online to Teams. So the whole idea is I want to say, hi, hey, have you got a minute? Need your input on this. And I'm going to send it dynamically when she's engaged, active in Teams. So I need the system to tell me, because I don't want to be going back manually checking myself. So I just go to the more options and I pick notify when available. And as soon as Yvonne comes back onto Teams, I'll get a pop-up and it'll tell me she's available. Now, if I want it to be this to be a permanent thing, I can leave it on, and anytime Yvonne logs on, it pops up to tell me. So is a colleague who I work with very closely, that could be very useful. But if it's somebody in the organization, it's a one-off message I want to send them, it's probably better off to turn that, because it keeps popping up when you've no interest in contacting them again. So don't forget to turn it off if that's the requirement you have. So you go back to the individual, more, and we simply turn off notifications. And that removes the notification setting, so it doesn't pop up anymore. Okay, we're moving into calendaring now. And again, I'll have to obviously show you in this one, because if I go back to the free version, it won't have calendaring. Now I click in calendar here, and this will synchronize with my Microsoft Outlook. So whether I book a meeting in Teams or I book an appointment in Outlook, it doesn't really matter. Now, I'll just take here a new meeting here. So when I click on new meeting, it's pretty much identical to Outlook, and you can see the idea there. So I'll just put in here, let's say, I'll put in project ABC review. I'll set it for tomorrow. I'll go for, let's say, 8 AM, and I need 2 hours to do that review. And we can see the idea. Now, I can also link it to a specific channel if I want. So, for example, you can see all my teams. I'll pick my diploma in project management, and I'll pick a sub-channel then, as we can see there. Give a location, probably type in line, put in the details, hit send. Now, obviously, I could add required attendees, very similar to Outlook, but I hit send, and hey presto, it creates the meeting, and that's how quick it can actually work. And if we actually look here, there we'll see the meeting. Now, there's also another feature here where you can have a live event. Now, most people won't use that. Just to put it into context, a meeting can handle up to 250 people. Now, you won't see everyone's screen. You won't see 250 web cameras there, but it can interact with 250. Live event can handle up to 10,000 people. A live event is really a one-to-many communication where a meeting is a more dynamic, interactive type of collaboration. So a conference or something like that, or what's happening, a lot of maybe CEO of a large organization wants to give a presentation, a live face-to-face address to their staff in the current climate, they could use a live event feature to set that up. If you are doing that, you probably do need to set somebody as the producer on that, so it gives you just somebody will manage the team side of it, just to assist the person. Presenting to 10,000 people is obviously a bit of a piece of work in itself. You don't need the headache of managing all your technology solutions as well. Now, the other thing I like to do is I also like to use Meet Now. So if I click on Meet Now, it brings me in, and you'll actually see here I could give a title for my meeting, you know, so I'll put in here, let's say, minutes review regarding some meeting I had. We have the options here to test. Maybe I don't want my web camera on. This is how I blur the background. This is how I turn off the mic. It's showing me what microphone I'm using at the moment. The reason you're not seeing my screen there, guys, is because I'm using the webcam for recording the webinar. So the device can't be used by two applications simultaneously. It's really based on that point I made in starting, that if you're connecting into something like GoToMyPC or remotely, that won't be available to you. Okay, but we can hit join now, and literally it will bring me in. Now the web camera would normally come up and show me here, and we can see here that really I'm unfortunately on my own here, a bit lonely in this meeting, but I can invite colleagues, and as we're chatting, we can say, hey, let's get input from Mary, we can invite somebody, and we can have a very dynamic, fluid meeting. pretty good feature, and I like the and by the way, here's an option too. If you want to share your screen, you can do that as well during the meeting. So you can show your spreadsheet, your PowerPoint, or whatever it is. You can show conversations, you can have chats going on during the presentation or during the discussion as well. What I like about that too, sometimes even if somebody is traveling in public transport or something like that, sitting in a coffee shop, they could mute their microphone, and if they have questions, they could answer it via chat instead. Okay, I'll just close that. I think we get the idea. And now we are moving on to the last part of it, where we're going to look at files here, how you integrate files with your Microsoft Teams. So typically you will start off doing all the stuff that I'm doing here, getting used to using Microsoft Teams, but then comes the point you need to review documents, you need to collaborate in documents, and Teams can assist that as well. So let's take a look at how we would do that. So I'm going to go to, let's say, a calendar here, and I could pick really any meeting. I might pick the one I set up for. So in a case like this, I can certainly add in documents as required. So I can have them in the channel, if you can see here, and as people go to the channel, they'll get access to the document, etc. Now, you can also notice here some extra tools, by the way. There's meeting notes, whiteboard, etc. So quite powerful here. But I'm going to imagine in the day-to-day hustle and bustle, there are documents that I need people to review, I need them to look at. So I'm going to go to my Teams here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my team demo here, and I have a channel here called test. So as we go in here, you'll see there's a couple tabs along the top, posts and files. Now I'm going to click on files, and very similar to SharePoint or OneDrive, we see the idea that you can integrate files with Microsoft Teams. So if it's a case of excuse me, we want to maybe put together a list of people who we need to contact about something, we might say, well, let's put it in an Excel spreadsheet. Well, if we wanted to do that, we could just click on New, and very similar to SharePoint, you can create a document within Teams. But what's probably more likely is I have a document that I've worked on, and it's sitting in my network drive or my OneDrive, and I want to share it with my team. So in that case, I use Upload. I'll go in and I'll find a document here. See, can I find, just see, can we find, let's see. Let's go in here. So unfortunately, a lot of these are confidential documents, so I'm not going to put any of these up. Okay, I'll get something in here, I think. Okay, so in this case here, we can see actually there's a course outline for capital project management. Okay, so I'm going to take that document there, and I'm going to open it, and what I'm actually doing is I'm taking it off my drive and I'm going to bring it up here into Teams. So basically anybody who has access to this team, to this channel, can go in and edit, and they can work on this document. So that's the upload feature. Now I just want to take a look at sync, because this is something I think is incredibly powerful, especially if you aren't always online. So if you're somebody who in normal circumstances, maybe you fly a lot or you travel a lot, or maybe you live in an area where you don't always have fast internet access. So in that environment, OneDrive has a certain advantage, because you can work on files remotely in OneDrive, whereby when you put something into the cloud, and only the cloud, you don't have that capability. So I'll just touch on this for a moment here just to show you. It'll probably give me a little warning to update, but I'll just show you the idea. If I go to sync, as you can see there, it goes off the sync with the OneDrive. Now, just something to be careful of, you don't want to give somebody access to your entire OneDrive, so you need to really specify the location within OneDrive, and you literally pick it like a folder, and you can have your documents in there, and they also sit in the cloud. So whether the documents are edited offline in OneDrive or online dynamically in Teams, they will synchronize between them. Great feature, good advantage of OneDrive. Now, so I just close that just rather than wait for it to. Now, the other thing I need you to understand, and to me this is a massive advantage in a corporate organization. Every team has Microsoft SharePoint working in the background. So if we look at my document here, I can actually go to Show Actions, and I can actually open it in SharePoint. Now, I don't have a SharePoint account, but I open in SharePoint. Certainly done training on SharePoint. I think the document management is incredible. But look at this, it's got SharePoint written all over it. It's like a team site with a document library. And you can actually see the document there. And again, the same idea from here. I can open it, all the usual stuff. And I'm going to open it here. Open in browser or app, exact same as SharePoint. I'll open it in the app. Open Word. So it's Word Online, obviously. If you pick online or if you pick the app. So you have a choice in how you open it. Just give it a sec and we can see the document opens up, etc. You see that SharePoint save icon, so that should be familiar to a lot of you. Saves automatically, incredible functionality. Okay, I'll just close that now and I'm going to move back now out of this a little bit, because what I want to do now here is I want to take a look at the app side of things. So I'll just move back. Just go back in this way into Teams. Okay. Now, so I'm going to go just switch and go back in, and now we see the idea. I still have just the same, it looks the same. Now we do know in files that I have a file there, but what I want you to notice is the plus icon. So you might remember the idea of adding apps into Teams. So I click and add a tab. You can see there's a whole range of apps. So for example, I might decide to, well, I put a Word document up, so I'm going to install Word in the background. It should recognize that I have a Word document in there and should try and link it. So again, you can see the idea. I picked up my document. There we go. I hit save. And it will now build. So you see you have a new tab now for Word, and it has my course outline. So it's kind of recognizing, just giving me a little bit more functionality there. Now again, I could add a tab and I could add additional apps. So I might just pick an Excel app. Now I don't have an Excel file, so it will want that. It would prefer if I had that there. So you see it's not allowing me, it's not picking up Excel. It's recognizing there's no need for that app. Okay, I'm just going to take a quick look here at the full app capability. So I'm in my corporate version of Teams, but I'm just going to switch back in. Nearly there, guys, almost finished. Excuse me. And what I just want to show you is the actual range of apps that are available. So when I click on apps down here, I get all the stuff we saw earlier, but you can see I have an endless amount of apps. So I'm just scrolling down here and we can see it's just pretty incredible what's there. So within there also, as somebody who works a lot on projects, they have in there the planner. There's a whole range of project management apps that you can connect into Teams as well. Okay, so I'll just come back to my main screen, and I just, so I'm pretty happy with what we've covered. Took a little bit longer than I thought it would, but that's the nature of training usually. So we've really covered the overview of Teams. Let's have a look at that. Calls, chat, presence, you might remember the top right corner. We looked at the activity, and the main area we looked at there was the idea of filtering. We looked at teams and channels. I suppose just to remind you how to create a team, you go down to join or create a team. We had a little look at chat. That's pretty intuitive. That's really a bit like a WhatsApp. We saw the idea of calendar, very similar to Outlook. We saw the idea how you can upload files. We've seen within that, probably remember, you can harness the power of OneDrive, SharePoint, and also third-party apps. Okay, so that's my overview of Teams. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to record the questions just to, in case, give people a bit more privacy, and I think we'll have a more honest Q&A session if we don't record the questions. So thanks very much. Please follow me on LinkedIn, and if you've any queries around project management or Microsoft Office, very happy to create a video and post it to help people out. Stay safe, be positive, and thanks for watching.